Next presenter, who is also a columnist, well-known, Larry Burchall, will be giving us a lovely talk, no doubt. I love listening and reading your articles.
Does the thing just kick off automatically or what? Go now. Anansi is a spider spirit from West African folklore. And whenever Anansi faced a problem, any kind of problem, Anansi always solved the problem and won. When my ancestors, who were black men and women, were captured or bought in Africa and carried across the Atlantic to the Caribbean, they brought the Anansi stories with them. Through the years, the Caribbean version became Nancy stories. When black slaves came up from the Caribbean to be sold in Bermuda, they didn't bring those Nancy stories with them. So our Bermuda folklore doesn't have Nancy stories. Now it stayed like that until July 2010. That's when Nancy arrived in Bermuda. But it wasn't the Nancy of our past, it was a new Nancy, non-negotiable costs. These costs were created as a result of the Bermuda government's debt. In 2004, Nancy was 11 million. In 2010, Nancy had grown to 84 million. Between 2014 and 2017, Nancy will average $170 million. So $170 million is what you're going to see going forward. This Nancy is an evil spirit. My ancestral Nancy fought others and won. This new Nancy can strangle all of us with death beginning as early as 2017. Now, what exactly does our Nancy look like? On May the 1st, 2014, Nancy consisted of national debt of $2.3 billion, annual interest was $119 million, the sinking fund contribution was $57 million, so Nancy was $176 million. For this year, government's projected revenue is $901 million, but Nancy gobbles up $176 million before that $901 million goes anywhere. So Nancy is gobbling up almost $20 out of every $100, and our Nancy is a greedy, gobbling spider. There are fewer than 51,000 of us Bermudians scrambling to take in that $900 million. But Nancy gobbles up the first $176 million. What about those thousands of expats who are here? Not their problem. They can split. They go home. It's us onions. It's our problem. What do? We feed Nancy. How? We grow our economy while limiting government spending so that we pay Nancy out of a bigger and bigger pot. How much bigger? Revenue must get up as high as $1.5 billion. That makes Nancy easier to feed. If we don't grow the revenue pot, we die. Economic death rattles will be heard when we meet our first debt hurdle in 2018. We next have to get over a $1.9 billion debt wall in 2020. GDP over $8 billion, we win. GDP around $7 billion, we might draw. GDP around $6 billion, we lose. But how do we grow our economy so that revenue reaches $1.5 billion? First, we must understand how this economy really works. There's no Santa Claus in Bermuda's economy. Instead, it's mums and dads and you and me buying stuff after earning the money. Today, Bermuda's GDP sits at $5.5 billion. We get $900 million in revenue. Getting revenue of $1.5 billion requires GDP around $9 billion. How do we get GDP to rise? By increasing on-island demand for goods and services. How do we do that? By increasing the number of people demanding on-island goods and services. How do we increase the number of people demanding on-island goods and services? Two ways. We either increase the number of people on the island, get ResPop up to 70,000 plus, or we get about 2 million high-end tourists. But there's a dark little secret in here. Accepting reports about growing obesity, while Bermudians may be increasing in size, Bermudians are not increasing in number. Between 2000 and 2010, 99.95% of all the 1,819 new Bermudians were people who had been granted status. Just one additional born Bermudian. Probably fewer than 51,000 Bermudians by 2020. If Bermudians are not increasing in number, how do we grow ResPop? Bring back overseas Bermudians or import new foreigners. The foreign people will be culturally different. However, importing foreigners is what Bermudians did for the 70 years when we were in tourism. From 1949 through to 1993, we hosted over 16 million tourists who were all culturally different. We looked after them so well that we became world famous for our graciousness and excellence as people who really knew how to treat tourists. Now it's 2014. Nancy is 176 million rather. At 5.5 billion, GDP is too low to provide the revenue to feed Nancy. At 61,000 ResPop, we're too small to provide the GDP needed to carry Nancy. So with Nancy, GDP, and ResPop identified, we can concentrate on fixing our core problem. Bermuda must accept that Nancy is what it is, that GDP must reach a higher level, that ResPop holds the key. That with a known trend in the population of Bermudians, growing ResPop is still the only way forward. Starting with ResPop, Bermudians must add business residents and infrastructure support workers until we get our ResPop past the 70,000 person level and the workforce is up to 46,000. This solution provides the best chance of taking GDP up to and past the $8 billion level. Alternatively, Bermuda must rapidly recreate a tourism industry where year in, year out, we host about 1.6 million air-arriving tourists and about 400,000 cruise-arriving passengers. But this solution carries the high risk that it won't reach 8 billion. So, in one Bermuda triangle, here's the whole story. ResPop, GDP, Nancy. Grow ResPop, this increases GDP. Revenue from an increased GDP feeds Nancy. No GDP growth, Nancy wins. If Nancy wins, then in 2018 we start dying, and 2020 is still coming.
Thank you, Larry. Questions? Yes, back there. Stand up and...
The consequences would be that we would simply find interest rates going up and up because we'd still have to go out and borrow in order to survive here. And we would find that the cost of living on the island would rocket up. All of our non-Bermudian workers would leave, and our economy would shrink to the point where only Bermudians are employed, which means you'd have a workforce here on the island of about 28,000. That's it. And the population probably down to around 50,000. We will be a basket case.
Can you give some examples of what are these non-negotiable costs?
The interest costs on our debt, which is at 2.3 billion, or was at 2.3 billion in May, that's 119 million a year, I think. And then you've got a 57 million contribution to the sinking fund every year. That's Nancy. Those are the fixed costs, the costs that we cannot control, we cannot manipulate, we have to meet them year in, year out. We have to, or the money supply from overseas is cut off. Don't look so shocked.
Your model is to increase the population for getting revenue. Are there other ways of getting revenue, and shouldn't we have a commission on getting revenue? We had a commission on how to reduce the debt. Shouldn't we have a commission on getting how to get revenue in Bermuda and use one of your main things, increasing the population?
The answer, short answer to that is no. Bermuda is an oversized economy. It is a peculiar and unique economy. We depend upon the resident population demanding services. So if you have a shrinkage in people, your economy will shrink. The only way to grow this island is to have more people on the island, because everything that we do here in IB is selling to the outside world. The only other option is to start taxing IB so that we tax their profits. But that breaks all the rules that we've got, and it flies in the face of the 2011 all-party agreement that said we wouldn't do that. We wouldn't even consider it until 2035. I think there'd be a huge whoosh if we change that tomorrow. ResPop is it. Yes?
So how soon would you see a currency devaluation? Currency devaluation, how realistic is that?
Currency devaluation is a nebulous thing. Bermuda only has $130 million in circulation. There's $160 million for U.S. holdings backing that. That circulates here on the island. What matters is that we can get our hands on American currency. So Bermuda currency and its play here is irrelevant. Doesn't matter.
Which country holds all of our debt?
Many. It's not a country. It's private investors, banks, pension funds.
Are they in China?
No, they're all over the world. Yes?
Someone once suggested that maybe a way to increase the air arrivals would be for the government to subsidize the cost of getting them here. Did they do that?
Government is already doing that.
They are.
Yeah.
Thank you, Larry. Okay.